There is a clear difference between gardening before an irrigation system and gardening after one. When water is delivered consistently and directly to the soil, raised beds become easier to manage. Plants experience less stress, and harvests are often more reliable. Raised beds can dry out faster than in-ground gardens. Their soil is elevated, exposed to more air, and usually designed to drain efficiently during hot or windy weather. Moisture may disappear surprisingly quickly. A bed that feels adequately moist in the morning can become dry by the afternoon, especially when it contains mature plants with large root systems. Irregular watering can create several problems. Plants may wilt repeatedly, develop shallow roots, grow unevenly, or produce fruit that cracks after sudden changes in soil moisture. Watering by hand can work, but it requires time, consistency, and careful attention to every section of the bed. A well-designed drip irrigation system solves much of this problem by delivering water slowly near the root zone. In this video, we will examine how to build a simple, adjustable system that waters efficiently, reduces waste, and can expand as your garden grows. Before installing any irrigation system, it helps to understand why so many ready-made kits create frustration. The first problem is simple. Many kits are not truly complete. They may include tubing, sprayers, connectors, and adjustment valves, but leave out essential components needed to connect the system safely to a household faucet. This forces gardeners to make extra trips to the hardware store while trying to identify fittings that are compatible with one another. The original setup demonstrates this exact issue. The package contains irrigation parts but no practical way to connect them to the water source. The second problem is poor organization and confusing instructions. A box may contain dozens of small fittings that look almost identical, supported only by a basic diagram. For someone installing irrigation for the first time, it can be difficult to determine which component belongs at each stage. Incorrect connection or badly placed cut can lead to leaks, wasted tubing, or hours of rebuilding. A good system should therefore follow a clear sequence, with every part serving an obvious purpose. The third and most important issue is how the water reaches the plants. Some raised bed kits rely on fine sprayers that mist water over the entire bed. This may look effective, but much of the water can land on poths, be carried away by wind, or remain on plant foliage instead of reaching the root zone. Drip irrigation works differently by applying water slowly under low pressure near the soil surface. University Extension Guidance notes that overhead irrigation generally loses more water to evaporation and creates more leaf wetness, while drip systems can keep foliage drier and reduce conditions. The fourth problem is durability. Thin tubing can kink, weak connectors may separate under excessive pressure, and small emitters can become clogged by sediment. If a system lacks filtration or pressure control, these failures become more likely. The original script highlights hoses popping off, drip lines clogging, and attachments breaking after installation. A dependable irrigation system does not need to be complicated. It simply needs complete components, clear installation steps, controlled pressure, proper filtration, and a method of delivering water directly where plants can use it. A reliable drip irrigation system begins at the water source, not inside the raised bed. Each component between the faucet and the main line has a specific purpose, and installing them in the correct sequence helps protect both the water supply and the irrigation. Equipment. The first component is a backflow preventer. It helps stop irrigation water from flowing backward into the household water supply when pressure changes occur. The exact device required may depend on local plumbing and water regulations, especially when fertilizers or other substances are introduced through the irrigation system. Next, a two-way hose splitter can be attached to the faucet. One outlet supplies the irrigation system, while the other remains available for a regular garden hose. Choosing a splitter with separate shutoff valves allows each branch to be controlled independently. An automatic timer comes next. It opens and closes the water supply according to a programmed schedule, reducing the risk of miswatering. However, the timer should not be programmed once and ignored for the entire season. Irrigation frequency must change with temperature, rainfall, crop maturity, and the soil's ability to retain moisture. The water then passes through a filter. Drip emitters contain narrow passages that can be blocked by sand, rust, organic material, or other debris. Filtration reduces this risk. but the filter still needs to be opened, inspected, and cleaned regularly. After filtration, a pressure regulator lowers the incoming water pressure to a range suitable for drip equipment. Household water pressure may be much higher than drip tape and small fittings can tolerate. Without regulation, connectors may separate, drip tape may rupture, and water distribution may become uneven. Agricultural extension guidance confirms that pressure regulation helps prevent individual drip lines from blowing out. Finally, an adapter connects the regulated water supply to the larger mainline tubing that carries water toward the beds. The adapter must match the mainline diameter and should be pushed fully into place before being tightened. The general sequence is therefore: asterisk water source gives backflow preventer gives splitter or control valve gives timer gives filter gives pressure regulator gives mainline adapter. Some systems may arrange individual components differently, so the manufacturer's instructions and local regulations should always be checked. However, extension guidance generally places backflow protection, filtration, and pressure regulation within the system's head assembly. Once the head assembly is connected, the next step is to route the mainline from the water source to the raised beds. This larger tube acts as the backbone of the system, supplying water to every individual bed. Run the mainline along the edge of the garden or beside a pathway where it is easy to inspect but unlikely to be stepped on. Keep it away from sharp tools, lawnmowers, and areas where wheelbarrows frequently pass. Landscape staples can hold the tube neatly against the ground, but avoid pulling it completely tight. Plastic tubing expands and contracts as outdoor temperatures change, so leaving a small amount of flexibility can reduce stress on the fittings. When the main line reaches a raised bed, cut it cleanly and install a T-shaped connector. One side allows the main line to continue toward another bed, while the upward branch carries water into the current bed. The far end of the main line should be closed with a removable cap or flushing valve. This design prevents water from escaping while still allowing the system to be extended later. A shut-off valve should be installed on the branch leading to each bed. This is important because every crop does not require the same irrigation schedule. A bed filled with young lettuce may need consistently moist soil, while mature garlic or onions may require less water as harvest approaches. With a separate valve, one bed can be reduced or turned off without stopping irrigation throughout the entire garden. The outlet should enter the bed close to the soil surface. Raised bed soil gradually settles as organic matter decomposes, so the original soil level may drop several inches over time. An adjustable elbow or vertical section of tubing allows the outlet height to be changed. Keeping it near the soil reduces splashing, erosion, and unnecessary movement of water outside the intended area. Plan the route with future expansion in mind. Even when only one bed is being irrigated today, continuing the main line and using removable end caps makes it easier to add more beds later. However, excessively long main lines or too many outlets can reduce system performance, so the total flow capacity and manufacturer limits must still be checked. Colorado State University Extension identifies overly long main lines and excessive numbers of emitters as common drip system design mistakes. With the main line secured, each bed isolated by its own valve, and the water outlet positioned correctly, the system is ready for the manifold and individual drip lines. After water reaches the raised bed, it must be divided among several parallel drip lines. This is the purpose of the manifold, instead of attaching individual lines randomly to the supply tube. A manifold creates an organized distribution point across the width of the bed. It also makes the system easier to inspect, flush, and modify when the planting layout changes. The width of the bed determines how many drip lines can physically fit, but width alone should not control the design. The ideal number and position of the lines also depend on soil texture, crop spacing, emitter flow rate, and how far water spreads sideways after entering the soil. For densely planted vegetables, such as lettuce, spinach, carrots, or other closely spaced crops, lines may be installed approximately 6 inches or 15 centimeters apart. Closer spacing can create a more continuous band of moist soil across the bed. It may also be useful in sandy growing media, where water tends to move downward quickly and may not spread far enough sideways to reach the space between widely separated lines. For larger plants arranged in distinct rows, such as tomatoes, peppers, squash, or eggplants, approximately 12 inches or 30 centimeters between drip lines may be sufficient. Colorado State University Extension recommends 12-inch line spacing as a practical arrangement. For many raised bed vegetable gardens, however, that figure should be treated as a starting point rather than a universal rule. Emitter spacing along the tape is another important measurement. Commercial drip tape may contain emitters at intervals ranging from about 4 to 24 inches. Closer emitter spacing releases water at more points along the row, while wider spacing may suit crops planted farther apart. The emitter pattern must still match the available pressure, total flow rate, crop layout, and soil conditions. The most reliable way to confirm the design is to test it. Run the system, wait for the water to soak in, and then dig carefully between two drip lines. Check how deeply the moisture has moved and whether the wet areas overlap. If a dry strip remains between the lines, move them closer together or adjust the irrigation duration. A well-designed manifold does more than divide water. It allows the spacing and number of drip lines to be adapted to the crops rather than forcing every raised bed to use exactly the same layout. With the manifold in place, the next step is to install the individual watering lines. At this stage, it is important to understand the difference between drip tape and drip tubing because they are designed for slightly different uses. Drip tape is a thin, flat product that expands when water flows through it. It is commonly used for straight crop rows and raised beds because it is lightweight, easy to cut, and simple to replace. Drip tubing, by contrast, remains round even when empty. It is usually thicker and more durable, making it useful for permanent layouts, curved planting areas, or systems that need to remain in place. Neither option is automatically better in every situation. The choice depends on the garden layout, expected lifespan, pressure requirements, and how often the planting plan changes. To install drip tape, first enroll each section along the length of the bed. Leave a small amount of extra material at both ends so the tape can be connected and sealed without being stretched. A line pulled too tightly may separate from its fitting when temperatures change or when the system fills with water. The emitter side must face in the direction recommended by the manufacturer. Many types of drip tape are installed with the emitter openings facing upward. This position can reduce the chance that sediment settles directly over the outlet while the system is off. It may also help the tape inflate and distribute water more consistently. The original installation likewise places the emitter side upward before connecting the lines to the manifold. Push the end of the tape fully onto the manifold fitting, then tighten the locking ring by hand. The connection should be secure, but excessive force can deform the tape or damage the threads. At the opposite end of the bed, cut the tape to length and seal it with a removable end fitting. Some systems use a dedicated cap, while others allow the tape to be folded several times and secured with a sleeve. A removable closure is useful because the line should occasionally be open and flush. Finally, secure each strip with landscape staples. Place the staples over the tape without puncturing it, and make sure every line remains straight and twisted and clear of sharp stones or tools. Before using the system regularly, leave the ends of the main line and drip tape open and briefly turn on the water. This flushes out soil, plastic fragments, and other debris that may have entered during installation. Once the water runs clear, close the ends and allow the system to reach normal operating pressure. Walk along every section and inspect the connections. Look for leaking fittings, twisted tape, dry emitters, or lines that swell excessively. If several connectors separate or the drip tape expands abnormally, check the pressure regulator rather than simply tightening every fitting. Next, determine how long the system should run. There is no single watering duration that works for every raised bed. Soil texture, weather, crop type, root depth, plant maturity, and emitter flow rate all influence the correct schedule. Run the system for a measured period, then dig carefully into the soil without damaging the roots. The goal is to confirm that moisture has reached the active root zone rather than only wetting the surface. If the upper layer is wet but the soil below remains dry, the system may need to run longer. If the bed stays saturated for an extended period, reduce either the duration or frequency. Sandy soil usually drains quickly and may require shorter, More frequent irrigation. Soil with greater water-holding capacity often benefits from longer intervals between watering sessions. Rainfall must also be considered, so the timer should be reduced or paused after significant rain. Routine maintenance keeps the system dependable. Clean the filter, flush the lines, inspect emitters for blockages, and check for damage caused by sunlight, tools, animals, or normal garden activity. An automatic system can provide a reliable foundation for watering, but it still requires regular observation to ensure that every bed receives the moisture it actually needs. A well-designed irrigation system can make raised bed gardening far more consistent, but it cannot replace observation. Its main purpose is to provide a dependable base level of moisture, especially during hot weather, busy days, or short periods when the garden cannot be watered by hand. By delivering water near the soil surface, drip irrigation can reduce unnecessary wetting of leaves, limit water loss outside the bed, and make it easier to control each growing area separately. A system with individual valves can also respond to different crops, allowing one bed to receive water while another remains off. However, automatic watering is not completely automatic gardening. Filters can become dirty, emitters can clog, fittings can leak, and seasonal weather can make a previously suitable schedule too long or too short. Gardeners still need to inspect the soil, watch the plants, and adjust the timer when conditions change. The best irrigation system is therefore not the one that runs unnoticed forever. It is the one that provides consistent support while remaining simple enough to monitor, maintain, and adapt as the garden develops.